Hey, welcome back. So, next I want to talk about the importance of withholding judgment and never making assumptions. And those are very basic things that, at face value, you may wonder why I want to explore them. Well, the the judgment piece is huge. I know that we're making progress in reducing stigma for mental illness, for substance use disorders, for many things. But obviously we still have a long way to go. And my experience with people who are seeking addiction recovery is that they expect to be judged. And furthermore, my experience in serving LGBTQ plus individuals, serving folks who have other stigmatizing conditions or stigmatizing or oppressed identities is that very frequently they have experienced judgment by people working in the healing and helping professions, whether those are medical professionals or therapists or uh, really any level of service. Sometimes includes people who have extreme religious prejudice or biases. It always seems to include a certain amount of ignorance, in which oftentimes we fear things that we don't understand. So I think it is not only imperative that we withhold judgment, but that we put that up front. I say to my clients very clearly, I'm not going to judge you. First of all, I think my higher power is way better at it than I am. And I took to heart something that Mother Teresa said many years ago. She said, if you judge people, then you have no time to love them. So the people that I tend to serve the most are the people that I see as being most like myself, and those happen to be trauma survivors, people with addictions, people with self harm and eating disorders. Those are the people that I most relate to. So my desire to judge them is essentially non existent. Um, what I've learned about not making assumptions is far wider and more diverse in nature. I think it's easy to make assumptions about why people use substances, about what role those play in their lives. But of course, every time I've made an assumption, it comes back and bites me. So, all of that to say, when you're working with a person who has experienced a substance use disorder, I encourage you to ask a lot of questions about how did the use of that substance benefit them? How did, at least early on in their addiction, what type of relief did they experience? What type of fears or awareness of pain were taken away? Um, because sometimes what you'll discover seems almost paradoxical. So, just like with the paradoxical effect of ADD, we know that people whose brains and oftentimes bodies are going 100 miles an hour, we give them a stimulant and they slow down. And we call that the paradoxical effect. I've known about that as long as I've been a therapist, but somehow naively, I was surprised when I started working with people who were using cocaine or crack cocaine or methamphetamines, that the very same process was occurring, that a percentage of them did live with ADD, and the use of an illegal stimulant slowed them down to the point that they could feel safe. And that's a crucial piece. Looking at the role of stimulants for people who live with attention deficit disorder, looking at the use of benzodiazepines and opioids for survivors of trauma. Um, Many years ago, I had a series of surgeries in which I was prescribed opioids, and I was very concerned because, again, just like I saw myself as being very similar to the alcoholics I served, I also see myself as being very similar to people in addiction recovery from opiates. And so I was very pleasantly surprised to find out that I don't like opioids. I don't like the way they make me feel. I even had atypical responses to a number of them. But at the height of my pain, following a surgery, I was given fentanyl. And I remember the way that that felt. And I immediately turned to my doctor and said, "Don't ever give this substance to me again." My doctor was very concerned. Was I having some type of adverse reaction? And I said, "Quite the contrary. I like this way too much." I turned to my family and I said something along the lines of, "It doesn't occur to me that there could be anything wrong in the world at this moment. I feel absolutely euphoric and this scares the hell out of me." So, all of that to say that for survivors of repeated and sustained trauma, very often abusing Ativan, Klonopin, Valium, Xanax, abusing Vicodin, Percocet, morphine, Dilaudid, heroin. All of these were the first time in the person's life where they felt safe, where they felt content, where they felt like they were okay and things were going to be okay. And that's another irrational aspect of addiction, is that this thing that's killing me and making my life completely unmanageable takes away my pain, takes away my fear. And it does that for a time until it doesn't. The expression that my friends in recovery use is that we needed more and more of what didn't work. Obviously, we develop dependence, we develop a tolerance, we need more. These are almost always very expensive habits to maintain, and they lead themselves to criminology and a number of other problems within our families. We experience devastating loss, but progressively our lives are consumed with the compulsion to get more, use more. And so understanding what it was that addiction took away that was bad, what it was that a substance provided that felt good, is important because it allows us to explore healthy ways for those very same needs to get met. Because in the absence of alternative coping, the absence of resources or natural supports, then we fall back into old habits. We do what comes naturally to us. There's another expression that my friends in recovery use, which is that birds fly, fish swim, and drunks drink. Questioning why a person does drugs and alcohol is only beneficial if we're seeking to understand what is it that drives this behavior, what is the unmet need, what is the fear, what is the emotion that's being numbed. Questioning the continued use of substances despite negative effects just demonstrates an ignorance of addiction. So, understand what drives the compulsion, understand what the missing pieces and needs are so that we can help get them met, and that will help optimize your service to those seeking freedom from addiction.